All right, so I have 2:02, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody. We're glad you're joining us for our coffee break this afternoon. My name is Helen Boylan, and my real job is that I'm a chemistry professor at Westminster College. And my volunteer job is that I'm a member of the organizing committee for PittCon, and this year I am chair of the marketing committee. And one of the things that we're doing that's kind of new is we're trying to provide some value added for our PittCon attendees outside of conference week. So you'll see we have things like coffee breaks and virtual learning labs and online short courses that are available outside of the conference. Yeah, so today's coffee break is going to focus on careers in science. And with us, we have Emil Gerardi, who is the managing director at TESA Talent. And I'm just going to turn it over to him.
Thank you, Helen. I appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for joining. What I'll do is a quick introduction and let you know what I'm going to be talking about today and how it may hopefully benefit you. Yes, my name's Emil Gerardi. I run a firm called TESA Talent. And so we will get into that. So who am I and how do I have anything of value to say to you? So I have about 22 years of executive recruitment experience in combination with internal recruiting, which we'll define that in this presentation, the difference between the two, but a total of 22. The story is, because stories are better than listing just facts, is I came out of college, went to school for psychology. I did acting in college. Then I went to graduate school because my dad told me to. Studied human resources management. And so I'm not a chemist, but the first job I got out of my master's program was with Shimadzu Scientific Instruments. I worked there for a couple months before I figured out what they did. And that was around, the Y2K time. And I was, in my 20s at that time, and they thought I was a whiz with recruiting. And like, long story short, they sent me to PittCon to recruit, and I just got fascinated and fell in love with the industry. We utilized a headhunter at the time, a third-party recruiter when things got really tough, and I kind of looked up to that person and eventually wanted to sort of be him, and I kind of did, and so that's the rest is history. The accolades or accomplishments is over the last 20 years have placed, it's even more than that, over 600 people into the laboratory sciences industry, worked for a large recruiting firm for 12 years, also worked at another one of my clients for 2 years, Metro USA, and then eventually, probably should have done it a long time ago, eventually started my own firm in 2017. It's called TESA Talent, and it is a boutique search firm that is focused on the laboratory sciences space. It's an acronym for what you can expect from us, which is tenacity, empathy, sincerity, and acumen. So we do focus on the space, and analytical instruments is what I know, but I am not a chemist or wouldn't operate one of the instruments myself. So if you stay for the whole time, actually what I was going to say is some of the things that I'm going to talk about you already know. But my goal was to input things that you may not already know. And so what you may learn if you stay for the whole session is the vast career options that there are for chemists and scientists. I've done talks at universities. Actually, a couple of years ago, I was asked to talk to graduate students at Penn State, graduate students of science, chemistry, physics, and it blew my mind how about 80–90% of them didn't even really know what jobs there were outside of academia, and some of them were going to graduate in a month. And so I was thinking that may be relevant to some of this audience. We'll see. So it's in two parts. We'll talk about those options, and then get into some things that you probably don't know in my area of expertise, which is how to manage a search process. And that could pertain to people in science or outside of science, as well as the value of working with a good recruiter, if you could find one, and and tips on locating that one and how to master that interview process. So the industry, as far as what you can do, I talk to people with science backgrounds every day, all day, every day. And, you only know what you're exposed to, right? And so really what I would like to do here is just kind of give a general overview. I mean, we pulled out some data on just areas and titles and examples of positions that you may not even know a chemist major could do. I think when a lot of chemists or biochemists get into that field, something like many don't even know why. They just, have a love for science and don't know what it's going to turn into. Some want to cure cancer, but there are so many ways, even industries that you might not even think of. The areas that I have a lot of expertise and experience in is more of the customer-focused, client-focused, interpersonal roles, which is on the left column there. Product management, marketing management, business development, technical sales, applications, that sort of thing. So you don't always have to put your head down and run samples and do method development. You can, engage with others. I found approximately, and this is just from doing this industry over and over and over again, that I think I have it down to about 20% of bachelors and chemists, when they come out, they go into the industry, they get a lab job, anywhere between 1 to 5 years out into the industry. 20% of them who have that itch to become more client focused start to get bored in the lab, and that's how they yearn for more human interaction and and sales oriented positions. But then on the other side, you have a lot of different options as well too, in market research and product development and quantitative analysts and writing and regulatory affairs, and in vast industries as well too. I mean, look at all these different industries that exist, and even in finance, there's a lot of chemistry in finance, in analyzing things. So that's really what it is. In IT, it's become big. Obviously, in some of these other more known places that you think of, like biotech and lab solutions. The semiconductor is a huge industry in this country that employs a lot of physics and chemistry majors. And so I'll sort of leave this as a general overview. And if anyone has questions about what physicians, if we went into that, it would probably be a 3-hour presentation. So I'll kind of leave that as a high level overview for that topic. But if anyone wants to chime in on that, because I'm going to move to the segment about the search process, recruiting, interviewing tips, things that you may not know. But if anyone wants to jump in with questions on the industry and titles, capabilities, please do so. All right then. So I know some of the folks on this meeting, and some of them I've talked to before, and some have probably heard me on my soapbox about how to interview. So it won't come as a surprise. But for those who don't know, and I think a lot of it is when you're dealing with a professional in any sort of profession, right? A lawyer, and you've never dealt with one before it's their first time, or you're buying a house for the first time. What do you expect, or what do you know? And I think just knowing what to expect and what is a good one or appropriate one for you. So the term recruiter is a very broad one, and it has there's different roles, right? So who are they? When we refer to recruiters as what we do, we're third-party recruiters, which we contract or engage with or come to an agreement with companies that either are having a challenge filling their positions on their own, or they could find talent, but they want to get the very best. And so that's really where we specialize, is we put a plan together to go out and talk to passive job seekers. But other professions within the recruiting field, well, it's a general term. So you may have temp agencies that might, their titles might be recruiters, et cetera. So an internal recruiter versus an external, while we are third-party external, there are many internal recruiters, and that is defined as somebody who is recruiting people for the company that they work for, which is what I did at Shimadzu and what I did at Metronome USA. And we often, and do now, partner with some internal recruiters at instrument companies or some of our other clients if they don't have the reach, right? And so what I'm going to be talking about as far as partnering with a recruiter, generally a third-party recruiter is like an agent or a broker that can lead you and guide you to opportunities that you may not know had already existed. And if you get one that's appropriate and at the top of their game, could also provide valuable insight into what that company's culture is, what the people are like there, how you can grow there, why you might not want to work there. The very best really build good relationships with their clients. But it's an industry that is very easy to get into and try. It's low overhead, so you do have a lot that don't have all that information, and they sling resumes around and don't have much information for you and kind of whip you through a process. And hey, it might work out at the end, but it's not optimal. So what is, staffing versus direct recruiting or headhunting, if you've ever heard these terms before? We at TESA consider ourselves more of a direct recruiting firm, or we don't mind the slang term headhunting, because for us, it means that we are proactively reaching out to people that aren't putting their resumes online. We're going after and seeking very specific people. But along the way, we build relationships with people like yourself, candidates, people that are in the industry that are most placeable, right? So it's always good to have a good relationship with someone who, to use an old phrase, has their ear to the ground like we do. The good recruiters will know what's going on, what the moving and shaking is. Whereas, maybe a staffing person is there, they have positions to fill and they look and see who applied, and that's a more of a reactive thing. And they may not be as consultative, and that's a broad brush. They may or may not. Whereas here and some of the other recruiters that I consider my competitors are more consultative. The idea, or what I would say for you guys, is to find one that's in your industry that knows we use the acronym a dig. You're a good recruiter if you're either specializing in a certain discipline like chemistry, and industry like scientific instruments, or a certain geography. So get to one that knows that field, and we'll get into like where to find one. And if you're working with if you are lucky enough or skilled enough to find a consultative recruiter that is going to walk you through a process, is going to find out things about you. This is kind of what it would be like, right? Versus a transactional person who's just, hey, I got this position, are you interested? And you never hear from them again. It could work, but that's what that transactional is. Whereas what myself and other consultative recruiters will do is we really want to understand, what it is that you're after in your career. It's a huge endeavor, right? Especially if you're employed already and you're thinking about leaving a job that pays you well for reasons where you want to upgrade. So we'll spend some time with that person and use something that my former employer used to call the CLAMPS model, which is, understanding their challenge, what's important to them. Challenge, location, do they want advancement? Are they worried about money, people, security? So there's different motivations for different people. And they'll, explain the expectations. They'll manage your expectations throughout the hiring process. And that recruiter, that if you're working with, that knows the company really well, they can uncover those hot buttons. They'll know, like currently with some of the projects I'm working on, I know exactly what that CEO is looking for. And I can, inform my candidates of that, and one, screen them out if they just aren't capable, but two, coach them through that process. And also one of the biggest things too is without a recruiter involved, oftentimes salary doesn't get brought up until the 11th hour, and you might go through. You fill out an application online for 20 minutes, and then you go through all these interviews over 3 months, and then you get to the final interview and they offer you half of what you expected. So, so diving into the interview process, I think this is the stuff that most, the average person I talk to doesn't know all of these things, right? And I'd say, since we have limited time, if I were to just, pass along one big thing to you, it would be, is to be selfless in a process, especially at the beginning of an interview process. I don't know, they do it a little bit now in like high schools and colleges, but when I was growing up, no one came and told me how to interview, what to do in an interview. You just think of these cliche questions to ask, and a lot of them are about what's in it for you, right? Which are important questions, right? You want to know, the benefits. You want to eventually know how much travel you want to know. But in the beginning of a process, you're talking usually to a hiring manager that is looking to solve problems, right? And they, how do you impress them? How do you stand out from the pack? And I would say if there's one common denominator, it really is the person who approaches it as if they were a consultant sent down from another planet that just, they don't care about themselves at that moment, right? In that beginning of that process, if you could try to put yourself in that situation. And you're going into that interview, you're going to answer the questions that are asked of you, of course, because the interviewer is going to ask about you. But you want to find out, well, what are you trying to solve? What problems do you have? What are your goals? What are the characteristics of the most successful people in your organization? What are your hot buttons and how can I help you? And it's not a common approach that people take, but that's what would separate most people. Because I tell you, even in a technical industry, seriously, every single job that we take, it's kind of funny. And we did one this morning, is we asked, what is most important to you? And this is in scientific instruments, they're looking for people with chemistry backgrounds. It always goes to soft skills. The CEO, the VP they care more about who that person is, what their work ethic is, how they handle tough situations. Will they be on time? Are they dependable? Do they care? Will they care about us as a company? And so in the beginning, if you're able to show that, then they'll fall in love with you. And at that point, that's when it's more appropriate to ask some of those questions about, what's in it for you and that sort of thing, because those are valid questions. But if you come starting with those, you're losing your audience a little bit, and you're not going to be compelling right off the bat. So I say sell yourself instead of just being recruited. If you want to break it down, you could utilize these 4 A's in any of the formats of interviewing. Even in phone interviews, people say, well, how do you use appearance in the phone? Well, how you sound over the phone. Phone interviews are starting to gravitate more to interviews like this, like Zoom and Teams and stuff like that, which is also another animal. But if it is a face-to-face interview, dress for success. I think every week we hear from one of our candidates, I was told that I shouldn't dress up too much. And I've been doing this for 22 years. I've never, ever, ever heard a hiring manager say, I'm not hiring this person because they dress too well. But I have heard them say they look sloppy. Now, if you wore like a powder blue tux to the interview or something like that, it was inappropriate. That's one thing. But, when in doubt, dress up a stage, right? And it might be the nicest you ever have to dress for that company. They might have a dress code policy that's business casual, most do. But yeah, definitely, it shows that you took the time too. The attitude piece. This is where a lot of people get into trouble. They don't even know they're getting into trouble, or do they do when it's too late? Is especially when you're asked a question about your motivation. Why are you looking to leave, this or that? That does not translate to tell me everything you hate about your company, by the way. So that's not the question. What you want to do, even if you are wronged or you're in a tough situation, you want to make sure that at least 80% of your answer is talking about where you want to drive towards, where you want to go, the future. And less than 20% about the past. You could quickly answer the question, say, and always be positive. Always be positive. Even if it's a tough situation, and you were in a bad boss, right? We all have. I've learned a lot here, but I think it's time for a new culture. And really, what I've enjoyed about reading up on Metro USA, to use them as is that I hear that and you start talking about why you can be a good fit there, and why you think it might work. So you're because hiring managers want, in the field that we work with, we're placing people who are the top, talent in the industry. And if they're going to pay us, to find that very best talent, they want candidates that are running towards something, not running away from something. In fact, they want someone who's just mastered their job and it's just time for them for a new challenge. I mean, that's optimal. But, we all like getting things off of our chest, but that's just not the time to do it, and say, start complaining about your boss or something like that. Another A is aptitude. And I define this as, and this is one thing that I would say most amateur interviewees or interviewers don't do, is really trying to understand what is most important to that company and the hiring manager, what I see as the term hot buttons are. I think we all kind of get wrapped up in ourselves. We're all guilty of it. And so we look at it from our own lens. And especially when we place like with salespeople, right? They go into an interview and instead of uncovering those hot buttons deeper, they just talk about what's great about themselves. Well, maybe what's great about themselves is not necessarily the hot buttons, so don't assume anything, you want to qualify and ask for it, make sure that they know it. And that's not just for sales positions. Like, hiring managers every week tell me, I'm not moving forward with this person because they didn't show any initiative to follow up. And, and I've had a lot of people get upset about that because they said, I didn't know that was a rule or that was the case. Since we only have, 7 or so minutes left, or 6 or so minutes left, I didn't plan on going deep into this anyway, because this is on our site, and it actually goes deeper on our site. So we have a blog that you can find here on our TESA Talent website. And one of the blogs is probably the best, overview of I've broken it down into 10-step interviewing guide. So you could look at that on your own accord. And I'm open to, I have a couple other things I could bring up, but I wanted to leave some time here for any questions about, some of the different topics that I brought up.
All right, so we can take questions in any format. You can chat them in, or you can unmute yourself and ask them. It's up to you.
Don't be shy.
So I'll go ahead and I'll start with the first question.
Sure.
What would you say should be the starting point for somebody who is looking for their first job? Is this,
so like
is
right
it
out
LinkedIn?
of school?
Yeah, someone right
Yeah.
out of school.
So, yeah, I think, looking at a first job is well, as far as the type of role is, you want to focus on what kind of experience am I going to get in this job over the next few years that's going to help me launch me towards where I want to go in my career, as opposed to getting caught up in how much it pays and that kind of stuff. But I would say networking as much as possible to get to the most appropriate, people that are going to influence. And it starts with the old like adage of like, if you don't know where you're going, then you're lost kind of thing. Is like, if you know kind of what type of career path you want to take, that helps immensely, because then you could start to network in those areas, right? I do have a tough time with recent grads who call me and say, can you help me? And they don't know what they want to do at all. And it's, because it's hard to market them, because really when they don't have much experience, you're trying to market their passion for what they want to do. So I would encourage them to really, kind of pick 1 or 2 parts of the industry and say, I'm going to go after this, and then network as much as you can, get to the influence makers either through your PI at school, or find a recruiter that specializes in that particular industry, or reach out to people that are already in it and ask them advice of how they got there, right? And usually people like talking about themselves, so you probably will have more luck with that than you think.
All right, we have a question from the chat. What is the main way that you find people for open positions? Do you use LinkedIn or other sites with profiles?
Yeah, so I started recruiting before LinkedIn existed, and it sounds antiquated what we did back then. We basically name gathered from like competitors and stuff like that, but which is essentially LinkedIn's kind of streamlined that for us. It is a huge tool that we use, but was also built up a big, a constantly, developing database as well too. So really, we take no stone unturned. I will say, Mackenzie, like, yeah, LinkedIn is a big thing for us. We get very little of our placements a year. Like at the end of the year, we calculate it's like 3% from from postings, with the exception of one section of our business that is more lower level positions. But it's yeah, that is a big spot. So if you are in this industry and you are looking, one of the things, we don't have time to talk about everything, is your LinkedIn profile is your brand. If you're looking, you don't necessarily have to click the button that you're looking, but you want to put keywords and stuff in there that that would make a recruiter have you pop up.
All right, good advice. I'm wondering about the Great Resignation that we're hearing about. Are you seeing that in the industry that you're working in right now?
Yes, I am about to have a panic attack. No, it's just to be honest, I mean, I've been doing this for 22 years, and I'm not a hyperbolic person. It is one of the strangest candidate-driven markets that I've ever seen. It's also fascinating if you're into economics, but it really, how we're seeing it right now is there's a lot of positions in a fight over that top talent. Yeah, people are leaving positions to try, and so there's a lot of movement going on. And because of that, candidates have more options, and so our work is harder because less people are calling us back, and positions are staying open longer. And while on this call, I'll probably have 2 more companies asking me to help them, which is great, but it's just an interesting. It's a good time to be looking. So you have leverage if you have certain skills, of course. But yeah, it's affected the different industries differently. I can really only comment on this one because it's happening at a whole other level at that, with like retail and fast food chains and even teachers and I'm not an expert in that, but it's vast and wide. Yes.
All right, we have another question from the chat. Daniel asks, is there a particular time of the year that seems to be busier than others in general?
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for asking. No, I once a week or so, people say, oh, this is probably your busy time of year, which it makes me laugh because people have said that about every month in the year. It's never busier one time or another on the amount of jobs that we have, because with the exception of January, right? So, because some companies work off of a calendar fiscal year and they launch those. So we do get a little boost in January, but we actually usually make the most placements now in December. And that's because there's a universal hard close. Like, people want to get things done by the end of the year. And that's really the only reason for that. So a little push in January and a hard close in December, but otherwise, no.
All right. Ifeanyi, I see you have your hand raised. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name.
Yeah, you're correct. Thank you. I would like to start by thanking you all for this wonderful career insight. Okay, my question is, I have a high interest in drug development through pharmaceutical. Mm-hmm. So what entry position do you suggest for such a maneuver into this industry, considering the fact that my background is in analytical chemistry, master's in analytical chemistry?
Yeah, depending on where you want to go with that, any way into a respected biopharmaceutical company, into their drug development, drug discovery team, or a CRO that's doing biologics or large molecule kind of stuff, and being around others that are smarter than you, that you can learn from, as opposed to going to some little rinky-dink play where you're because in the beginning of your career, you want the key is to grow and get good experience that's going to make you more marketable for your next role.
Thank you. That sounds good. Thank you.
All right, so we are about closing in on the half hour. So I did want to share some information about PickCon. So bear with me while I'm getting my slides loaded here.
Helen, there was one more question.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I missed that.
From Christina.
Oh, Christina, very good. Thank you, Christina. The question is, how would you coach someone who has been in an industry for over 10 years with extensive experience, but are looking to switch careers? Are they considered the same as a recent graduate?
Unfortunately, in many industries, yes. It's challenging and it's scary, right? Because you are, especially if you've built up, your value is from what you do, what you know. You may have to sort of start over. And I think the key is to accept that, because a lot of times people say they want to change industries, or they just can't because they can't afford it, right? But yeah, there's no easy answer to that. That is one of the more challenging things to do, but I've seen many people do it, and if you have the resiliency, you can.
Great. Once again, just thank you everybody who has attended. Emil, thank you for sharing all of your insights. I did want to make you aware of some great opportunities through PittCon. PittCon has an employment bureau. I think a lot of people aren't aware of it, but it's a free service for all attendees, whether you're a conferee or an exhibitor, whether you're looking for a job or you're looking for an employee. So I wanted to give you some information about it. It opens on January 3rd, where you can upload resumes or positions. There's some online searching that begins in February, and then at the start of PittCon, the actual online searching for all candidates begins. And it does carry on through March for a little bit, so it's extended beyond the conference, but it's a really great opportunity. So I encourage you to check out the Employment Bureau. And as Emil mentioned, the soft skills are really an important thing, and PittCon has a lot of great opportunities for you to sort of develop your soft skills. So we have short courses, and this is just one example: supervisory skills for technical managers. We have networking programs, and I believe Emil is going to be offering another one on sort of the career options, but this one's on tips and tricks for marketing yourself toward a successful career in spectroscopy. And even in our technical program, we have an interesting symposium this year about entrepreneurs and startups. So I would just encourage you to come to PittCon in person. We're very excited to be in person in Atlanta this year, so we hope to see you there. And with that, I think we're going to close up our program here. Thanks to everybody who attended this afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you in Atlanta.
Thank you.